Good morning, everybody. I think we'll kick things off. Welcome to our webinar, everybody. My name is Ben. I'm the KeyShot account manager. I'm sat with Connor, our CAD and product visualization consultant, who's going to talk you through all the features throughout this webinar. We've had a lot of interest in KeyShot in the last month or so since it's been released. So I thought it'd be really nice to do a bit of a webinar to show you all the features, what it's capable of. More importantly, just to give you guys a bit of a chance to answer some questions as we go as well. So we're also going to be recording this, so if you miss anything, or if you do join us a little late, or you have to dash off, not a problem. We'll send you around the recording after we've finished. So without further ado then, I'm going to hand over to Connor now, and yeah, off we go.
Hello everyone, I just thought I'd ask first, make sure everyone can hear us. No one's going to put in the comments if you're struggling at all, just let us know. No, everyone alright? Excellent. Okay, well, let's kick this off then. So welcome to the webinar. We're going to have a look at the following during this. So first of all, we're going to have a look at migrating to KeyShot 8. I know some of you already will have upgraded, and those of you that have will know just how easy that is. We're going to have a look at the new resources and UI enhancements in KeyShot 8, and of course, what you're all here for, to look at some of the new features. The main ones being Cutaway, scattering medium, image styles, geometry shaders, and we're going to have a look at KeyShot Viewer at the end there. Because I know a lot of you have been sort of inquiring about that recently, and there have been some improvements to that too. All right. Okay, so the KeyShot Migration Assistant. This basically, when you install KeyShot 8, allows you to smoothly transition from KeyShot 7 to KeyShot 8 by giving you the option to copy across your settings and resources from KeyShot 7. As it says there, it doesn't remove any resources from KeyShot 7, so any resources you have in those folders will stay there. You can create it in a couple of different ways in KeyShot 8, so you can have them all so they're put into a migrated folder, or you can have them go into a custom folder of your choice. So I just thought, let's go straight into it. Let's go straight into KeyShot. Let's open that up. Alright, so some of the stuff you'll notice first is stuff in the new what's new, welcome to KeyShot 8 window. So there's a brand new, well, I say brand new, an updated KeyShot 8 guide, and you'll see there are some new demo scenes available in there for practice with some of the specific new features. Alright. As for some of the new resources and UI, you'll see there's a few new options in materials, some of which we'll be covering later, like your Cutaway, multi-layer optics. You also got various resources in your colors, textures, environments, which is pretty standard with any KeyShot release. They'll always bump some new ones in there. Another one that's pretty useful, if for those of you that use the cloud library, I know not everyone chooses to use that, but it's a pretty good resource when it comes to getting some extra materials or extra textures. You used to find that when you clicked on that little button in the bottom left, you'd have to open that effectively in a web browser, but not anymore. Now they've got it so that it comes up in its own integrated KeyShot window, which you can then snap into parts of the user interface. Pretty useful for then sort of like having it inside, so you can easily download materials and environments when you need them. I'm just going to remove that. You also find that in a lot of the menus, especially when we have parts open, they've got some new icons in there, basically to make it a bit easier to find whichever tool you're acquiring under the left mouse button. So you notice sort of lock and move, they'll have these new little icons, which just make it easier to navigate those right-click menus. Right, so let's have a look at some of the new features. So I've prepared a couple of demo parts, we're also going to have, I'm going to use a couple of the KeyShot made, Luxian made demo parts as well. Let's go into there. So we're going to start by having a look at the cutaway. So you can see I've already applied one to this object here. It's sort of hedged from a blade. And the way this feature works, so if I hide that off, we'll just look at creating that effectively from scratch. So you can see I've got my blade here, but if I want to see how the screws work or how the blades are functioning around those screws inside that model, I go to Add Geometry, add in a cube, bring in something like that. Of course, at the moment that's a little small, so I just whack that there for now. Now, those of you that are used to CAD packages will think, oh, well, we're creating sections during planes, isn't it, normally? But in KeyShot, we use geometry to effectively cut geometry away from what's existing. It doesn't physically change the geometry, but effectively just hides whatever is encompassed by that. So if I go to Materials, to the Cutaway options, we've got a few Cutaway options. I'm just going to go with the cross-hatching lines for now. So stick that in there. You'll see it's now cut out that section from the assembly. We can change how that's displayed. So if I now go into that Material tab, you can see I can set it as a material. I can change the color. So we get that to any color I'd like. I get to inherit caps, which is quite a useful one. So that will effectively copy the material from the part that it's cutting through. And another useful part. So if you can add excluded nodes. So if I wanted to pull that in, for example, so I'll push that in there. See, it's now cutting through everything. If I didn't want to cut through those screws, go into the material and add this group here as excluded nodes. And it is as easy as that. So you can see now the way it functions by doing that is it's got these little slots that allow it to move back and forth around those screws. Let's put that one back in. Right, I know that's going to be a useful feature for a lot of you. A lot of this has been a feature that's been asked for quite a long time in KeyShot, so I'm sure there's a lot of people that are going to be happy to see that. Okay, let's have a look at the next one. It's going to take a while to render in, so I'll just default for now. Okay, so we've got a few new options as well in terms of another material we can put in now is scattering medium. So something previously you'd have to put in post-processing, so in Photoshop, smoke, particle effects, you can now put in directly as geometry. And the way we can do that is the way it's displayed here. So if I hide off these ones, and we'll have a look at creating our own ones. So we can add in geometry. So add in another cube to that. Just put that up here for now, and I'll make that a bit bigger. So I'll go down 300. Right. We can go down to scattering medium material here. Let's say I want that to be textured fog. See, that now sort of fills that geometry with that scattering medium. Now, a lot of people think, well, I'm not going to get much square smoke coming out of a lot of my objects. And there's, I don't know whether you're aware, but there's such a thing called VDB files, which are effectively density textures. And we can assign them to this material. If I do that via the material graph. So the moment it's got this as its volume map, so it's effectively just filling the entire thing. If I go to BDV, these are also available, a lot of free ones available online. I've just got a couple here for demo purposes, so I can put in that there. Oh, that's the wrong one. Oh yeah. So if I remove things, and bring that VDV map in, assign that the as the density texture, and if I increase the density, increase the size, you're starting to see some particles there. I can now increase the scale, increase the density a little more. So yeah, it's starting to see some effects coming out there. Of course, some of the default ones, so we can add in things like clouds. So that's one of the default ones which Luxury put in there. And it means you can generate smoke effects like that when rendered out look extremely realistic. Alright, let's just return that back to our previous position. Another new feature they've put in, so previously, I'm sure you've heard of KeyShot 7, they had something called IES profiles for lighting. And this was a fairly complicated material. You tend to put people off really because you had to put in specific details into it to tell it what sort of lighting you wanted. Whereas now with the new spotlight feature found in the lighting presets, so we've got spotlight there, you can add spotlights which can be controlled, so you can change beam angle, fall off of that. Great, so we can make that really tight to the parts, we're making it very thin, define shadows around that part. We can spread them out a little bit. Very good for getting defined light and increasing that contrast, really raising the game of your renders. And another useful feature is you're going to be able to add textures to these. So if I change this to, let's change that one. You'll see it's now projects it with a texture. So it's showing sort of like predefined, I guess, shadows. So if you're shining it to give like a window effect or window pane effect, you can add that in as a texture. Let's move that one. Okay. Also in this one, we're going to have a look at some of the new image options they put in. So they have massively overhauled a lot of the options in image. You'll notice immediately, you'll see some of what you were able to see before, so things like bloom and vignette. And these options you get under what they call the basic options now. So you can increase the exposure. And this is effectively to reduce the necessity for that post-processing, which was pretty much always necessary with a lot of KeyShot images. You're always going to want to bring Photoshop, do those little tweaks. And now, under the photographic option, you have even more tweaks. So you've got all these options here, so you can increase the exposure, change the white balance, 0. whack up contrast, and it's very good for creating very dynamic images without necessarily having to do that post-processing. Now I mentioned before, of course, it's still got the bloom feature, but that's changed a little somewhat as well. So I'll change that one. So what you've got now is, well, before you had bloom intensity and bloom radius. So if I whack down that bloom threshold and whack up that intensity and the radius, everything gets very blurry. All the brighter pixels are getting a bit washed out. So having that bloom threshold now means that it only adds that bloom to the brightest of pixels. So as we move that up, the darker pixels will stop becoming bloom until you get to a point where it is only the brightest areas that are getting that bloom. Right, so from that to that, and it's going to be a very useful feature for those of you that don't have time to be doing the post-processing stage. Right. Okay, so so we're going to move on to the next model. Let's have a look at some of the geometry shaders, which Luxian have added into KeyShot 8.
Just while Connor's loading up the next image, do feel free at any point to ask any questions.
Oh yeah.
There is also a chat feature as well. You can just send us a chat request if you like. Feel free. We want to make this as interactive as possible, so don't be shy.
Okay, so this is one of the KeyShot demo parts. So you will actually have access to this by yourself, and it provides it's a very good part really for demoing all the different geometry shader components. So if we'll see that all right, it's not too bright, is it? Okay. And what I'll do is I'll just hide off that ground plane for now, and make that background a bit darker so we can see it a bit better. Okay, there we go. So here we got a glass of water. I was thinking about doing a pint of beer, but I thought it was a bit too early in the morning for that. So in here we've got water, ice cubes, glass. All of these have various geometry shaders applied to them, and I'm going to go through them one by one to show you how each one has been applied. So we'll start with the liquid. Also, under the right mouse button, now you have the option to show only. So we'll show the water. You see now you've got effectively a bubbled texture in there, and this has been applied using the new geometry node within the material graph. So if we take that off, you also find that doesn't actually change the geometry. What you have to do before that is applied is execute those geometry nodes. So if we now execute that, those bubbles should disappear, and they do. Right. So now if we execute that again, those bubbles should come back. And these are of course probably editable, so we can say the size variation to be 5, and we'll find, so this goes again, we'll find that some of the bubbles become bigger, some of them become smaller, and we get a lot of control over how those bubbles appear. Of course, you see there's also a node that can control those, and in the same way that we could control the density of those scattering mediums via the VDBs, you can control the density of effectively where the bubbles are appearing. So if you wanted them to appear further up the top or further to the bottom, you can apply effectively a gradient map to that, and they'll appear closer to the bottom than they will to the top. Alright. So hide off the liquid. Go to glass. So there we go. Right, so we have some water drops out on the side, and these have been applied via the displacement map. So that one before was using the bubbles. These can be found under the new geometry option under the right click in the material graph, by the way. So we can go in there and add bubbles, add a displacement map, or add flakes, which we'll be looking at in a second. So in fact, the best one to be looking at those with is probably going to be the ice cubes. So let's look at the ice cubes instead. So you're probably looking at thinking, like, that's going to be difficult to cat up effectively. So you can see there is actual texture on that. There is a geometric texture on that, rather than just the bump map that we're used to having to use in KeyShot. So if I enter that into the material graph, try and make it so you can see everything as well. So you see we have a displacement map attached to the ice cube. Now before, so if I execute that after I've removed the geometry map, this would have been the best we could get in KeyShot 7. So we'd only be able to add in a bump map and a diffuse that would allow us to sort of try and create that texture on the edge of the ice cube. Whereas now with the displacement texture, with the displacement map, we can assign that, run those geometry nodes, and using this noise texture is effectively raising parts of that geometry. The darker parts are the areas that are laying sort of lower, and the lighter areas are the parts being raised, just for reference. Okay. So now we're going to have a look at the glass. Right. So the flakes work slightly differently to the other geometry shaders, in that you have to effectively create a copy of the geometry before you can apply the flakes to it. So we'll do that first. So we'll go and duplicate this part, and I'll duplicate it in the same position. And when we go into this part, I can say that I want it to be here. Okay, so I can add in flakes. Geometry. A little difficult to see. We're starting to get some. They're a little large, so we can change the size in and the density up. You see we're getting some flakes now in that surface. I like the density way up actually. There we go, that's more like it. So now you can see how the light is reflecting off all those flakes within that glass. So like I said, it works slightly differently in that you've got to duplicate that part before you can add flakes into it effectively. And it works the same way now as liquids do with interacting with glass. So they changed the way that it calculates that light traveling through glass. And having liquid in there, so if we add that back, if we add that liquid back, They've improved sort of nested dielectrics, is what they call it, and that effectively means that that water geometry is overlapping with the inside of that glass, and that means it just improves the calculation of how that liquid should be viewed in the glass. You can see that it's extending all the way up to the sides. It has been a little tricky in the past with liquids. You've either had to have a slightly offset material from within inside, or I know people that have separated the entire inside material and just made that liquid. Now with the nested dielectrics, that's become a lot simpler. Okay. And I'm seeing as this is a glass part, I feel like I should also give you a little demonstration of the multi-layer optics, which is again kind of improving the calculation of light passing through glass. So that's another option that we get in our materials library here. So we get some multi-layer optics, and it's sort of I'm trying to think of somewhere where you'd see this in real life. Probably as something like a camera lens, the way that the light reflects and refracts through that camera lens can sort of separate out the colours of light. And so if we applied that to the glass, of course that's massively overdone on this one. If I enter that, just to show you what to expect when you apply a material like that, it has effectively a base material, and then you are layering optics over the top of it. So it's good for sort of coated glass. All right. Okay. So as I said at the beginning, I know a lot of you have been asking about KeyShot Viewer and exactly how that works. I know some of you don't even bother using it, but it's a tool that Luxine specifically are really trying to push because they really see the benefit of it. But yeah, so us designers was like, well, we'll stick to using KeyShot. We're fine with that. But I mean, Anderson, it is actually a good bit of software, and it's particularly good for demoing to clients or showing to people who you don't need an understanding of KeyShot to be able to use it. So what we can do, if I open up if I have to use the Windows side, open up the configurator bit. This is another one you can practice with. From within KeyShot, and it's one of the base demo parts. So once we've got a part that we want to show to a client, show to a marketing team, and we can set up in various studios and different shapes. So we bring in various ones of those. You want different colors, combinations. You can now very easily, I mean you have been able to before, but there has been some marked improvements to KeyShot Viewer, specifically with how it's set up. So to do that, you go to View, Window, and then Configurator Wizard. It's also in, I've also put it in my custom workspace here. We go to Window and Configurator Wizard. And I'll ask you some sort of basic, fill in some basic data and say, what do you effectively want to be displayed? So we can set up our parent models. We've got material variations preset up in this. Material sets, so the material we're going to be changing is going to be the body and the metal. These are our combinations effectively. So when we select that within KeyShot Viewer, it'll give us chrome and blue. Select that, it's going to give us brass and yellow, and so on. We can say which studios do you want it to be driven from, and usefully now, you now have a presentation option, so we can switch to presentation. And this is what the client will see, or whoever you're showing this will see when they open up KeyShot Viewer. So you've got all your models, and it will very quickly swap between all three. You can say, I want to see that blue, I want to see that yellow, that one, that's quite nicely grey and gold. Work from the side, change the studios around, and that is effectively what they'll see when they open that up. And all you have to do to send that to them is, because KeyShot Viewer is a free bit of software, so you can go to the Luxian KeyShot website and download KeyShot Viewer for free, and they simply have to run through the install. If you run through that configurator and then do a file save package, so that's saving out as a KSP. When you then come to open that, and we'll open that in KeyShot Viewer just so you know what to expect. Should be fairly quick. Okay. So you can open file and navigate to a KSP, or it's in my recently accessed ones. So you see it's exactly how we were seeing it in KeyShot. And they will have the option to cycle through these, and it avoids you having to process renders only to show to a marketing team or a client, and then them to say, I don't like those, I like this one. I always do a lot more, I like this one. So it improves efficiency, and I think that's why Luxian are trying to push it. Alright. I just thought I'd finish with the options, showing you some of the images that some people have already produced in KeyShot 8. And if you have any questions,
yeah,
now's the time to ask.
Thanks, Connor. I don't know about you guys, but it blows my mind every time I see this stuff in action. Not being particularly technically minded, and seeing how these renders are completed is just fantastic. So thank you very much. Just one question we've got here from somebody asking. It's about Cutaway, saying, yes. I'm assuming we can use imported parts from our CAD software for the Cutaway settings, i.e. if I wanted a complex geometry cutaway, I could simply create that alongside what I wanted to render. Yep.
So I only showed you cutting away using that cube, because that's everyone has access to that. Yes, of course you can apply that cutaway material to any physical geometry. Of course, it has to be solid, so no surfaces. But yes, you'll be able to apply that to any bit of geometry you bring in.
Okay. Any other questions from anybody before we wrap things up?
Oh, actually, yeah, I did want to say something, because I know someone's brought this up before. On the KeyShot website, when you try and download the plugin, for Creo users, some of you will be using the Creo plugin for KeyShot. And on the KeyShot website, it still says that it only has the plugin for Creo 3 and 4. That plugin will also work for Creo 5. If anyone using Creo 5, that plugin will also work in that.
Okay, I think if we've got no more questions from anybody, I can see people are asking about downloading the webinar afterwards. Absolutely. So what we've done is we've recorded this. So what I'm going to do now is, once we've all wrapped up, I will send this out to everybody that got my invite. You'll also have my contact details. For those of you who joined a little later, my name's Ben. I'll probably be in touch with some of you over the last few months anyway. Like I said, I'm a KeyShot account manager, so we can chat through licensing, upgrades, all that sort of thing. I can forward any messages on to Connor as well. That's not a problem at all. Yep. So yeah, this will be completely available to you. It will go on YouTube as well, and I'll send you all the links out so you can watch it a million times if you want. Never be afraid to come back to us with any questions. So yeah, I think that is everything. Yeah, I think that's all from me.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for joining, and yeah, like Ben said, if you have any questions, then don't hesitate to ask us. All right.
Okay, everyone, thanks so much for your time, and I'm sure I'll speak to you all soon.
Okay, bye bye.